Okay, are we ready? Welcome everyone to Oxford Real Farming Conference. This online session today on breaking the silence on land struggles in Europe. My name is Corbett. I'm from the Land Workers Alliance. I'm a member of the coordinating group of the Land Workers Alliance, and the Land Workers Alliance is a member of the European Coordination Via Campesina, who've helped put together this session today, and we're going to hear from some different speakers from different countries where Via Campesina members are working. I am a market gardener, currently living in Wales, and I've also lived in Scotland for 10 years, working in community growing and market gardening. And I'm studying for a PhD in different land ownership models for agroecology in transitions in Scotland. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of the speakers today about different land strategies and land struggles in Europe and what we can learn from each other. Article 17 of the UN Declaration of the Rights of Peasants enshrines the rights of peasants and rural workers to land and natural resources. The fight for fairer and better European land governance regulation has been at the forefront of the work of the European Coordination Via Campesina. Yet land struggles and land grabbing in Europe remain muted. And equally muted is the role of the EU agricultural policies which play roles in these struggles. Although the European Parliament has acknowledged that, sorry, I'll speak a bit slower for the translators, sorry, Axel. Although the European Parliament has acknowledged that land concentration undermines European food sovereignty, policies to counter this phenomena are lacking. Land commodification, concentration, and speculation in favour of industrial farming are the root causes of land degradation, biodiversity loss, and the difficulty of young people to access land. Land is a common, not a commodity, and people, not corporations, must be able to enjoy it. Today, we're going to hear from 4 different speakers from across Europe. Antonio Onorati is a farmer of the Italian Rural Association and member of the coordination of European Via Campesina, an honorary president of the International Crossroads Centre. In the role of president of the International Crossroads Centre, held from 1992 to 2016, he chaired the organising committee of the 1996 Parallel Civil Society Forum and was the international focal point of the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty from 2002 to 2011. Then we'll hear from Barbara Siegieńczuk. I'm really sorry about that pronunciation of your surname, who's president of Zieleni Zeralo Association in Poland. Upon buying a house in 2008, she became emotionally connected with its inhabitants and the surrounding nature and got to know the beautiful areas. Since 2012, she has been actively participating in events related to shale gas and the Chevron company, posing a threat to natural environment, farming and rural communities in the area. After Barbara, we'll hear from Eliane. Eliane Bakker is a part-time farmer who works for Stichting Lenteland and is an active member of Toekomstboeren, which is a member of Via Campesina in the Netherlands. Searching early on for ways to cope with the environmental crisis, she went on to study future planet studies in Amsterdam. Realizing that agriculture plays a crucial role in many ways, she continued her studies with a master's degree in organic agriculture and agroecology in Wageningen. Within Toekomstboeren, she does research on the commons, and within Lenteland, a foundation that develops regenerative community farms, she focuses on development and sharing of knowledge and experience about regeneration and the commons. Finally, we'll hear from Emmanuel Hallard, who is a sociologist specializing in environmental management and agroforestry issues. He's worked as a researcher at the National University of Costa Rica on the theme of agrarian crisis and policies in Latin America, and has been a consultant for the implementation of agroforestry projects in rural areas in Latin America, in collaboration with the university and rural communities in Latin America and also Africa. He was also a Belgian cooperant for rural support to indigenous communities in the Argentine Chaco. He's been collaborating for many years with the movement Wallon Action Paysanne in Belgium on the issue of access to land. So yeah, a really interesting lineup of speakers. We'll hear from each of them for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to open up for a Q&A session at the end of that. So really look forward to that and look forward to hearing questions from the audience. And without further ado, I'll pass on to Antonio.
Good afternoon to all. I'm trying to share my screen, hoping it works. There we go. First of all, I would just like to give a small parenthesis about myself. I'm a child of agriculture. We had a farm which resulted from the agrarian reforms, agricultural reforms in 1958. And I'm really proud of my past and proud to be able to present here. I have a quick overview and overview of the initiatives, and I have to apologize to all of those who will not be mentioned. The first remark that I have to make is that we often have a partial vision of the things happening in the field, literally and figuratively, especially in Europe. Because we consider them invisible. Farmers are invisible, transparent. However, men and women are there working for the food in Europe. Actually, approximately 68% of the food comes from smaller farms. European Union has a strong responsibility. The countries that decide on common agriculture policy should be aware that they have a large impact. They are responsible for everything that is happening. This common policy finances everything that they've realized. People who receive money receive 30% from the whole of the policy, common policy. With the concentration of the land belonging to big companies and not smaller farms. But the question of land in Europe has been an issue since the Second World War in many countries. We had a long history of initiatives that were often full of conflict and were passing through repression. The combating history for the initiatives was long, but we do not have to give up. Just to give you an idea, we have the fight that has been going on since the 80s against the industrial forestry or deforestation. Why? Because this is an initiative to defend against fire and to use a part or to recuperate a part of the water that is used for the forestry. Quickly, just to summarize a couple of different initiatives. We have a big example of victory at Notre Dame de Londres. The fight in Italy to block usage of agricultural or arable lands for the transportation of fossil fuels. We have also the shepherds in the Catalan Pyrenees reviving the communities. We have the National Reform Movement, the Land Justice Network. We need this land to produce food and not to speculate, not for speculations. There is also a lot of things we can hear through the countries, but this is something we hardly ever see or hear in large media. And often those testimonies that don't reach us because they're considered to be silent. People are considered to be silent. The more land industry gets, the more power they receive. And we have seen that the France of that we have seen that small farms were really resilient, trying to be resilient during even the COVID crisis. They were trying to persist. After all, as I said, there are fights that are even broader. They're not just a small defense of the small parcel of land, but also impacting the bigger infrastructures. We have this fight against artificialization of the arable land. We mobilize in defense of those lands. It is much better to work on arable land and to use the arable land than to have industry there. We have different agricultures and different farmers. Some are very active, very strong, but also the industries, they sometimes have the support of politicians and government. We have the small farmers who are trying to persist and fight for their rights. I will show you the example of Sardinia, where they resist against industry on the small arable parcels, lands, that they try to use for example, sun energy for the panels that will be placed on the arable lands. Of course, we have to react. It is nice to have movements, but we need to know what we are doing. And there are initiatives, and I will quote a couple of them, who managed to create a new governance of agricultural arable land, to change the utilization of it, the use of it. We have the creation of regulatory body for agricultural land transitions in the Walloon region in Belgium. Unitaire in Switzerland had initiatives trying to control the usage of land, trying to promote the legislation in the national context. We had initiatives in Croatia with a large discussion of the redistribution of lands, trying to defend the use by the farmers or the usage of forests by the farmers. There are initiatives against the expropriation by the state and against destruction of forests. We have also a movement in France linked to activist movements fighting against land and water grabbing, earth uprising. And this last initiative they had was against a large installation that would basically take all the waters that are available there. We also have to mention the personal initiatives that a couple of individuals animated and were fighting in the mountains. Or another one, we have different activities to get the land back in the Pyrenees. Some of the initiatives are very important for the European coordination. And for that, we needed a law that would allow us to defend ourselves. We know that without that, we cannot do anything. We need legal framework. We need the norms that help us fight. Otherwise, we often end up in front of the court, at the court, in prison. Another example, in Eastern Germany, we had a couple of initiatives to get the land back for young people, young farmers. They were fighting against the grabbing of the land by the big international companies. This time it was European multinational company. Another example, a long tradition of expropriation of lands. And slowly we managed to get the possibility to prevent the privatization of the lands in Europe and to help farmers in Europe to defend their land. I said I was going to be fast. A small example from Sardinia. It's an island where the land is defined or determined by definition by water. There were more than 50 local communities against the degradation of the soil, agricultural soil. And I wanted to congratulate the small committee, Siegieńczuk per Narbolia. 7 people fought for it and they won. They had a lot of solidarity. There was a lot of injustice. One of the gentlemen that you can see on the pictures spent a couple of months in prison, but they managed to win. Once again, and I'm reaching the end of my presentation, Via Campesina has been fighting for 7-8 years, but it is a long fight. And it showed us a couple of things. The land is not a commodity, it is a resource, and it's men and women who work on it. And it is a social, if we speak about commodity, it's a social commodity. And public authorities should take this into account. we have to try to defend, to prevent the concentration, but at the same time, public authorities have to help develop. And for that, we need instruments that will allow us a radical change of the use of the land and access to the land. And for that reason, we had different protests in Brussels, discussions with the parliament, reports, informative reports from us, but also at the parliament itself. Majority voted in the parliament for that. And finally, there was a demand in Europe to find a solution for the better governance of the land, to defend the use of our lands for food. We needed a new legal framework because we didn't have any, for two key principles that are basically the origin of this grabbing of land. We need fundamental freedom, which is the free circulation of economy, to be changed, because they are influencing the wrong use of lands. We are saying that those principles, the freedom of commodity and economy, should not be applied to the land. Land is not a commodity. Land is not economy. So it has to be changed. We need
one more minute
to
Antonio.
go.
Sorry.
We need to, and I will just finish here. It is important to say that there is a criminalization of people who are fighting, and the directive that we are proposing, the principles of implementation that should come soon. It's the implementation principles of our proposed directive based on human dignity, non-discrimination, equality, equity, and on justice, gender equality. People who fight are often silent, and farmers are not victims, they are resistance. They're fighting to feed people and to work on their land. They resist to continue living from their own profession, which is of fundamental importance for the whole society. And this profession is only possible if we work with the land and not against the land. And we need the support of the society, support that is often difficult. Those things are often difficult to explain, but they are very important and good for us.
Thank you, Antonio. That was a lot of really amazing examples in there, and lots to talk about and discuss at the end. I'm going to hand straight over to Barbara now, who's going to talk about the struggle in Poland against Chevron.
Good evening, my name is Barbara Siegieńczuk. I'm a member of Zielony Żurawlów Association in Poland. I would like to tell you about a long story, a story about our protest, which lasted for 400 days. It was a fight for our land, for our families, and against a global corporation, its arrogance and its ignorance in terms of legal decisions. We blocked a way to the terrain which was leased by the concern. The road led to a piece of land in which the works were about to start. On 3rd of June 2013, we started our fight, and it lasted until the 7th of July 2014. Could you please turn on my video now? Thank you very much. Now I will tell about what happened before we arrived on the construction site. Before we had fought with the concern since 2012. Back then, we had no idea, no information on shale gas exploration. In 1 year, 1 year was enough to explore the topic, to gain new information, which we used to fight against Chevron. Our weapon was information, patience, to approach the topic in a deeper way. We looked for documentation, we analyzed it, and then we realized that the company that we fought against didn't have even a valid concession. That was unacceptable for us. In Poland, for a citizen, if he or she does not have a valid document, he or she cannot even erect a fence. And this huge concern didn't have a concessions either. No one wanted to believe us. Local authorities didn't believe us that such a big corporation could act against the law like this. That's why we founded an association. So we were able to find documents in a more adequate way. Then, when the concern realized that we looked for any information about it, and our local authorities, when they found out we were fighting against Chevron, it was even harder for us to find information. They believed in money, not in our rights. The kind of the soil we have in our region, such a fertile soil, makes only 1% of whole soil in Poland. And in this particular soil, they wanted to explore shale gas. If there were any fracking, any accident, then we would lose an access to potable water. The concern signed agreements with local farmers, which were not legal according to the Polish law. A farmer like this couldn't even go to a lawyer to show an agreement like this because it was unvalid. After 25 years, the company would have a right, a preemption, a right to buy the farmer's land. The company, the concern, Chevron, they had 4 concessions in Poland, including a concession in national park, in a protected area. And after these 25 years, they could be able to acquire rights to those lands. The fight was very hard, but for us, it was important to fight for our land. We didn't want to let the concern in. We didn't want them to decide on our lands. We met local authorities. We met officials, we invited academics who told us that fracking is a huge danger for our country and for our region. We won. We won thanks to our persistence. It had to last for such a long time because we fought not only against Chevron, but we also fought against the legal regulations which were valid back then in Poland. Some regulations have been changed since then, and they are better for the citizens now. If the citizens in the future are against some concern, some big company, it will be easier for them to reach the suitable information. They will be able to access the information in one office. All the permissions for the concern will be stored in one place. I will show a couple of pictures right now.
If we can wrap up after the pictures, Barbara, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure.
The company wanted actually to already start their explorations earlier, despite the directive to protect the birds and habitat. They started some work, and we actually called some officials, authorities who had some power to stop this company, but they didn't want to do it. That was back in March 2013, because there was a willingness to explore and extract gas shale. This turned the blind eye of the officials. And although there were many mishaps, they thought that there was nothing wrong. So next, they actually encroached our area on the 3rd of June. And then we actually blocked this area where they wanted to put the drilling. We had some tent and also some field kitchen. We slept there for 4 nights in the cars in order to block that area. And then this area became like a place for education, where we were showing some information which we gathered during 1 year on shale gas exploration, extraction, and its consequences. We can see our field kitchen where we could prepare some meals, and also there were also some controls from Polish health department, from Polish tax department. So we felt oppressed, harassed. And on the side of the Chevron company, they hired a company that tried to block our actions. We were provoked by them in a way. And then we actually, we were sued to the core. I actually had 8 court cases, and there were many people that had to, had 5 8 court cases. Here you can see the police summoning people to the court. You can see here the cameraman who was hired. The one in white t-shirt is from the corporation, and the other one is our cameraman. And thanks to him, we felt safer. And we started getting some visits from other countries. They felt that we were inspiration to them. Czech colleagues from Czech Republic helped us a lot. And they said that our land are over that reservoir of potable water. And many people from all over the world came and visited us. And we were an inspiration to fight against corporation, especially for England. The English people also had problems with the shale gas extraction, but they didn't know exactly that one can stop a large corporation, that one can fight against large corporation. We succeeded. And in England, there were protests as well. These protests were moved to Romania. And of course, all this information were stopped, were blocked. No media showed the real information from our protest. We were actually laughed at, they mocked us, and at the beginning, they only showed information on the media that we had some court cases.
Thank you, Barbara. We're going to have to move on because we've got 2 other speakers as well, just to give everyone time. Do you want to make any final comments just on your presentation before we move on?
Last comment. A lot of support we received from the young people, youth people
Donc
from
les
Poland
jeunes
and from
aussi
abroad.
ont participé.
And this is this belief in youth and the fact that youth, the young people, they take part in this protest. They understand what kind of harm can be done by corporations. And here, I would like to thank
Je voudrais les remercier.
for all the involvement, all the public involvement. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you so much for the presentation. It's really powerful story, and I'm sorry to have cut you off, but just to give people time. But an amazing story, and well done for all of the work that you put into that. Hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. The next person to speak is Eliane, Eliane Bakker, who I think is there. Hello, Eliane, take it away.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I will shortly introduce myself again. I'm not sure if people will still remember. So I'm from the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, and I'm a part-time dairy farmer in the Netherlands. So I work with cows and dairy, and also I work for Lenteland, translating to Spring Country, and this is a foundation that is working on access to land and regenerative farming. I will explain in a bit why that is so relevant in the Netherlands. And next to that, I'm also active in Toekomstboeren. That's the daughter organization of Via Campesina in the Netherlands. And this translates to future farmers, or farming in the future, or farming for the future, depending on which translation you like better. And there I'm working in the core group as an organizer, but also on the working group for land and commons. So in this working group, we do a lot of work and research and work together with farmers on the potential of commons and new regulations that that will improve access to land for farmers and young farmers. But first, I want to explain you a little bit about the context in the Netherlands, which is quite interesting. We don't have a very big tradition of land grabbing by large international corporations or land expropriation. Most of the land is privately owned by farmers, and this has been, since a long time. But the case here is that, and I think this is a problem throughout Europe, is that a lot of farmers are stopping. So in the 1950s, we had about more than 400,000 farmers, and nowadays it's only 50,000 left. So every day, about 10 farmers stop. And farmers are dying out. I see a comment that somebody's not hearing anything, but I'll just continue. So farmers in the Netherlands have a difficult time, and we do see that people, and this is also partly due to this gearing towards industrial agriculture, which is promoting large-scale farming. So the smaller ones have to stop because of the financial pressure, but many people are starting to see the damage as well that is causing, and also European regulation causes some problems now. We have a nitrogen crisis, which means there's too much nitrogen in the air and the soil, and this is harming biodiversity. So now we actually have to enforce regulations around that, and many farmers are told to stop their practices. On the other hand, we also see a big interest in agriculture coming from young people that don't have a background in farming. So that's just people who are coming from a completely different background, and they don't want to be behind the laptop anymore. They see the value of real work on the land, and they start to educate themselves and start to farm. So we also have seen in the last 10 years or so that from just a handful of small-scale market gardeners, it's now about between 300 and 400 small-scale market gardeners that have started, and that's a really promising trend. But what these farmers, and there's still many more to come, I think, that are now working on starting their farm, but they are facing the problem that land is really, really expensive in the Netherlands. It's one of the most expensive land in the world. Now an average of 100,000, like 80 to 100,000 euros per hectare. So you have to be almost a millionaire to start a farm of a couple of hectares. And beside that, is also just really difficult to find, because most farmers, they sell the land to the neighbor who can then increase in scale. This is why organizations like the one that I'm working for, Lenteland, have started to tackle this problem. So these organizations are basically working on buying land with with money from the community, and making it a collective in collective ownership in this way. So not only using community funding, but also sharing the responsibility about what to do with that land with the community that is connected to that land. So that's, and of course there can be a farmer that can choose what's happening on the land from day to day. But in this way, also citizens have a say in how the land is used, and whether it's sustainably used, and with care for nature and for the people that live off it. So this is what my organization does, and I can name at least 5 others that are also working on this in similar ways. There's a whole lot of individual farmers that are also trying to fund land so that they can start their farm by putting choosing another form of ownership than private ownership, like a foundation or an association, to manage the land. Also, this is because it helps in making sure that the land is used well, also in future generations, so that you can, so that when you die as a farmer, there will be no consequence for the use of the land. It will be still for the same purpose. So this I just wanted to tell you about these developments that are going on in the Netherlands about collective land ownership and access to land and people who work on it, because I think it's a really promising trend. But I also have to say that that we are far from there yet. We have made some good steps in the last few years, but I think there's a lot of opportunity also for policy, because in the end, I think the government has to take it a step further by making policy that favors access to land for farmers, for young farmers, and also for commons, to enable communities and citizens to also determine how the landscape looks and take care of it well. Also to put to limit the way that is the speculation, to limit speculation, because that is still also a big problem in the Netherlands and one of the reasons why the prices are so high. And that's the situation in the Netherlands. If you have questions, you can ask them later. And I think I will stop there. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Eliane. Thanks for that update from the Netherlands. That's really, really good to hear about, and really great to hear there's more and more people growing there, even though the struggle to get land is challenging. Finally, we've got Emmanuel, who's going to talk to us about some of the proposals for agricultural policy and land reform along the lines of the Foncier, I think. So thank you, Emmanuel. Take it away.
I am a researcher. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a researcher. I represent MAP, so the farmers movement, and also a member of the Via Campesina European section. I would like to offer you a proposal over the creation of a body in the Wallon region. So a body to regulate the sale of farmland, of farms, and the purchase and the lease of farms. Proposal is brought by MAP, so that's the movement of farmers, but also by other players. Belgian agroecologist movement, and also other bodies that I will mention later. Yes, can we show this next slide, please? Can we show the next slide, please? So we fight against some general issue concerning the management of land. In the Wallon region, for instance, we have imbalance, structural imbalance, many owners, speculators or non-farmers. We have an imbalance of the sectors, so there is a lot of production that are not so focused on the internal domestic market, and then difficulty for trained youth to find farmland. So we have a lot of land grabbing. We have very high prices. This is the second most expensive countries for land in Europe. So we will talk later also about other things, for instance, some management. Can you pass to the next slide, please? So some figures here, just figures. We have some structural imbalance. It's been 40 years that around 60% of walled farms have disappeared. And the surface area of farms have tripled. So when a farm is sold, usually we split the building and the land on the other side. So big neighbor units can take the land, and so this is also a process, as we can see concentration, grabbing, and exclusion. It's impossible for young people to buy land. We have seen the land grabbing, but with these figures, we can see that 62% of agricultural land is owned by people who are not farmers, and they are bought by non-agricultural companies, that do speculation. We can pass to the next slide. So owners' lobbies, they want to exclude farmers. Why? Because selling farmland without farmers can be assessed 80% of the original value. So it just means that many people give their land to management companies, and they are subcontract to some other companies. And this is why the situation is very risky. And it's, yeah, we can go to the next slide. So something is to be regulated in order to stop the price soaring. So stop allowing the sale of the land without the farmers. We need to limit also the purchase of land by speculators. Why? Because when it is bought by speculators, the price of the land increases. And also real estate companies cannot buy land. This should be stopped, because the speculators who buy a farmland, they just want to get more value out of the land, but they don't want to cultivate them. Yes, we can pass to the next slide, please.
Within the family context, the land is difficult to transfer because a lot of young people who are not from agrarian context and are schooled have not enough money to buy the land. The situation becomes more difficult.
So
And
it's
the
much
price that
too
the
high
costs
to recover the farm, even within the
is
framework
higher,
of the
and we ask ourselves who will
of this context,
buy
and we will
all
wonder who
those
is
farms
able
that
to
are
buy
still
this land in
remaining
Walloon region.
non-occupied in Wallonia. We are risking getting big industrial owners and become the slaves of industry. The next slide, please. How to regulate the land? I suggest two concepts: usus and fructus, and only usus. It could be one of the, it could bring to the abuse if we just focus on one of the possibilities. Next slide, please. Abuse would be the right to sell abuses, to sell to anybody at any price. Following this vision, there would be no regulation, absolute freedom for speculation and speculators. The fructus would be an absolute vision, the right to receive the fruit, to rent or not rent to anybody, the right to have it or not to have it, to receive the fruits of the things, and under what contract. We can see more by the day that this is contested, that not everybody wants it. And there is the obligation of the government to allow the regeneration of the soil. We are, next slide, please. We are inspired by the regulation of sales in France that is called favour, which could block the sales and or give it to another other farmer, young, for example, and only follow the objectives determined by the law. Favour may act if they are in favor of the installation, resettlement, or maintenance of farmers. And equally, it would avoid or prevent takeover of the lands. Next slide, please. Favour gets a lot of critics. Why? Because it creates a lot of frustration, because of its lack of democracy, amongst other things, because they do not consult all the partners or with all the partners, and sometimes consults a big agriculture union, but doesn't take into consideration the farmers' movements. Also, for their choice of companies or the individual that would take over the land. There are enough young people who are not from agricultural world and who are not aware and don't have the traditional knowledge, the knowledge of traditional work. And there is also the need to have short circuits for this, and we need to act. Next slide, please. For this, we need to act. Next slide, please. They can block the sale, as I said, the favour organization. They can give it back to a farmer, but they can block the sale at different stages. We would like to have a body that could regulate and help the transition and fight against the takeover of the land and transformation of the land for industrial use, following certain objectives, as I said, a better repartition of the lands, redistribution, installation of farmers, creation of laws that would determine precise objectives, with the possibility to revise to make the revision of prices, and they should consult different actors, many more than now, all the syndicates, all the agricultural or agrarian organizations. They should allow a vote of everybody, especially when it comes to blocking the sale, especially trying to avoid to block the sale to another farmer. We can see that this could act with authorization and have the threshold that is determined by all of them together, the threshold that could allow a farm to have a license for certain use of the farm. It is necessary
one
to
more-
allow this organization.
One more minute, if possible, Emmanuel. Sorry.
Maybe the last slide, the summary of the regulations. We can see that a body that could regulate abuse could also block the sales or change, redirect the sale, or to give the land to a specific organization if the farmer is not using the land for farming. We believe that it should be possible to give the possibility to seize certain lands to authorized body for redistribution. We should also avoid giving the land to non-farmers to use the land to their own benefit. We have different possibilities to support the idea of agrarian organization with many actors, syndicates or unions, the farmers' unions and other organizations that could help in this. Thank you. For more information, you can always contact me. I didn't have time to present everything I wanted to present. It was really brief.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And sorry, yes, I'm really appreciating the complexity of what you were just trying to present in 10 minutes. Possibly we should have had a session for you to talk through that entirely for yourself. And it was really interesting for me. At the moment in Scotland, there's a consultation on the introduction of a public interest test on the sale of land that is a little bit similar to SAFER, but not in a no way near as strong or comprehensive as how the SAFER works. So it's really interesting to hear your analysis of the SAFER and ideas for how it might be introduced in Belgium. So yeah, I feel like we could probably talk a lot about that. And I just wanted to thank all of the speakers for talking about the long and hard work that you've all been doing to protect land for small-scale farming and against corporate land grabs. It's really inspiring, and I was really impressed by the kind of dedication and perseverance that you all have in the length of those struggles, and really impressed about the success of some of those struggles as well. We are just about to close the crowdcast, and I think there'll be a link shared in the crowdcast for anyone that wants to come into a Zoom session and ask questions to the panelists and have a bit more of a discussion until 3:30 GMT time. So I think that link is just about to be shared with you. I've got lots of questions for the panelists, and possibly the panelists have questions for each other as well, but we'll try and make space for questions from the audience as well. So look forward to seeing you in a second in the Zoom. Thank you, speakers. We'll just wait a minute to see if people come and join. I think if you want to put your videos on, you can. So far, we don't have any questions from the crowdcast, I don't think, Antonio. Hello, people are just coming in from the crowdcast, and there's a few people coming through the waiting room at the moment. I'll just give 1 more minute for people to come. Yes, if people have any questions that they want to put in the chat box, that would be really helpful for the translators to translate the questions to the panelists. I'll just wait 1 more minute.
There was a question from Emmanuel.
Yeah, Emmanuel, do you want to ask the question directly? Was that directed at anyone in particular? There you go.
Yes. I asked, should I ask it now? Yes. We have a big problem with the video. My question was for everybody. How can we, how can the social struggles lead to legislative changes in agriculture? In Belgium, we have strong political parties, or the Ministry of Agriculture with certain political majority. How to change this imbalance of power? We have very few political parties that want to help us agriculturals, how to go above this obstacle. We should think probably about the alternatives, like in Switzerland, where they have the referendum possibility, because the political world does not help us in Belgium. Thank you.
Antonio, do you have a response to that, possibly? Or...
I will answer according to our experience. Is there an issue? We have seen 2 possibilities. First was to use the existing spaces in legislation, and the second possibility is to work through our initiatives to have our say in the political floor, and something in a simpler way. Somehow the European Parliament sees a simpler political space regarding land governance. In Italy, we have some legislation dating 1968, thanks to pressure in all Italian regions, something that it was amazing. So we need this grassroots initiatives, and what we have now in terms of legislation is not enough, and what politicians are doing is not enough.
Barbara, in Poland with the campaign against Chevron and shale gas, do you feel like it was a really strong grassroots struggle? Do you feel like there were policies or laws in place in Poland that helped, or there could be, or what legal tools might have helped you in that?
Here in Poland, we could only defend ourselves using searching for unlawful things that the corporation did. So they didn't have adequate permissions to carry on their exploration in Poland. And this is a very good lesson for us and for our authorities, that they should follow the regulations better and concessions, and not only to trust the corporation that if this is a big corporation, they won't violate the law. And it turns out that they do very simple errors, which we can use to protect the land. So what we learned from this situation is to read. Even if we confront facts, a company that wants to do something on our land, we should read first all the legal documents or the legislation. And it turns out that it's not only case of corporation, but also in case of Polish companies, they also don't follow the law. So we can use it to solve the situation.
Thanks, Barbara.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Gary's got his hand up. Do you want to ask your question, Gary? Are you there, Gary? Maybe he's gone. Okay, we'll wait and see if Gary comes back. But Joanna has a question for Eliane that she's written in the chat. But Joanna, if you're there, do you want to ask the question out loud? Otherwise, I can read it out in the chat. I'll read it out. So for Eliane, could you put your description of the current situation in agriculture in the Netherlands in the context of the type of farming? Where I live, there's a lot of relatively cheap, low quality, artificially grown plants and produce from the Netherlands on the market, which made me assume highly industrialized horticulture is big there. Is that the type of farming traditional producers mainly pursue, or is it mixed? And what is the approach amongst those young aspiring farmers you spoke about?
Thanks for the question. It's true, horticulture is big in the Netherlands. So we have a lot of export in that going on, but the percentage of land that is used for horticulture is relatively small because it's in greenhouses and very concentrated. So very, very intensive farming. But yeah, in terms of land use, almost or more than 2/3 of the land is used for dairy farming. So that is you could say the traditional type of farming in the Netherlands, and those farms are I think between 20 and 80 hectares or something. So that is, yeah, there's a mix of types of farms, and relating to the young farmers that I was talking about, those are mainly small scale market gardeners farming 1 or 2 hectares, sometimes a little bit more, but usually not more than 5. Otherwise, yeah, larger scale farmers are usually conventional farmers that still use chemicals, or some of them, I think between 4 and 5% are organic now, but still a very small percentage. Is that, I don't know if that's an answer to your question, or if you wanted to know anything else, actually. Otherwise, I see Gary is there.
Yeah, thanks, Eliane. Gary, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Ros. Can we ask Barbara what is the actual situation on shale gas activity in Poland right now, and what does she think has been the net result of the protest movement? Barbara, did you hear that?
Yes, I did hear your question. Thank you. At the moment in Poland, we've got quite a difficult situation, economic situation. The budget is not enough. And the government says that we've got shale gas, and this gas can save our budget. But from what we have been through for the 3 years of fighting against corporation, following all the documentation and information, I cannot see such a possibility for Poland to have shale gas extraction. Why? Because on our lands, this shale gas is very, very deep. And there is a contamination of this gas, and decontamination of that gas is very expensive. And in the USA, wherever there is extraction on large scale, the extraction is on 750 meters, and in Poland it is 5 kilometers deep. So this comparison shows us that it's not going to be profitable. So on one side, we feel resentment that there's been some investment, 100 concessions for shale gas extraction have been given, but I'm actually glad it has been finished, and there is no large corporation that will come to Poland to drill and extract shale gas. But in Poland, we've got our own gas. It's the liquefaction of gas, liquefied gas, and we can rely on this gas. We also have coal, and I think we are going to forget about gas shale. It's not possible for it to be profitable. I don't know if I answered your question, unless you have an additional one.
It's a very interesting response. I'm amazed to hear that the shale gas companies hadn't anticipated quite how difficult it would be. I mean, surely they employ lots of geologists to tell them these realities, but maybe not.
That you mean that they didn't anticipate it's going to be that deep? Oh. Yes, well, whilst they were drilling in Poland, the rules were changed for the benefit of the companies, that without the assessment how it will impact on the environment, they were able to drill until the depth of 5 kilometers because there was no shale gas. So it's logical for us that nobody will come over here to do that.
Wow. That's
so
quite an amazing.
The earth actually defended itself in a way.
That's an incredible story. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Ross, if I can?
Yeah.
Yes, I would just refer to two initiatives that because the shale gas I have the translation on my yeah. No, the two initiatives on gas, shale gas, because this was a very large movement, and we have had kind of the international solidarity movement coming from Canada and the US. In Italy, we have two very big examples dealing with the national petrol enterprise. It's more hard when you have to deal with the transnational. This is a national monopoly, Eni. And in two places, one was near Pescara, another was in Sardinia. And the movement started, this is interesting, in town. It's a kind of reaction of civil people, NGOs, others, environmentalist organizations. They fight for 3-4 years and nothing happened. The work go on. When in the two cases, farmer organization come in the case of Pescara was vineyard. There were 2,000 hectares of vineyard that were affected by shale gas because sulfur, other bad smokes. And in Sardinia was a dairy production there. And in both cases, when they come in, and they come on the committees, they come in action, things change. Both of the projects were blocked till I can say 4 weeks ago, when the new fascist government says that they will restart this type of initiative. That means that we have to restart again to fight against shale gas. As you can see in the pictures, this was one of the meetings that we have done in conjunction with the Indians from Canada and Alaska, just to say how this movement was really very, very large.
Thank you for sharing that, Antonio. Yeah, it's a really worldwide struggle, and it's really brilliant to hear stories where it's succeeded and to see the solidarity for different campaigners working on shale gas, and how farmers can really bring and support that campaign with other groups as well. I think it's a really amazing example. We're going to wrap up this session now, but I just wanted to thank the speakers again for their really inspiring stories and persistence in the struggle. And I hope everyone's enjoyed the sessions and enjoyed the rest of Oxford Real Farming Conference. We're going to have to jump off the session because I think there's a new session starting. But thank you all for coming. Emmanuel, you've got your hand up because it's very short. Please put it down. Okay. Thank you again, everybody, and thank you to the translators, and thank you to the organisers and the volunteers as well for all your hard work in putting the conference together. And see you all next time or somewhere soon. Okay, bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Bye.